Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's event, Outdoor and Risky Play, Reframing Perspectives Using Evidence. This webinar is hosted by the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute in partnership with our Early Childhood team and Outdoor Play Canada. My name is Beth Blakely, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I am the Child Injury Prevention Program Coordinator at the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute. Before I introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Louise de Lannoy, I would like to go over a few important items and some housekeeping information. For your information, all participants' microphones are muted and cameras are turned off. If you have any questions for our speaker, we ask that you please use the Q&A box that is located in the bottom center of your Zoom's Windows taskbar. The chat box is also available if you have any comments or technical support questions during the presentation. My colleague, Connie Herman, is joining us today and will also be responding to any technical support concerns and monitoring the Q&A. As a reminder, this webinar is being recorded. The webinar, along with the presentation slides, will be emailed out to everyone that registered for the webinar and will also be available on the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute website. Before we begin this presentation, I would like to take a moment to orientate everyone to the Prevention Institute and acknowledge our privilege in sharing and working on these traditional lands. The Saskatchewan Prevention Institute provides services to all those living on treaty lands 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10, the ancestral territories of the Nahiawak, Nahithawak, Nahinawak, Anishinaabeg, Nakoe, Dakota, Lakota, Nakota, Dene, and the homeland of the Métis. We recognize that these lands are currently inhabited by Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island, including many other First Nations and Inuit peoples, and acknowledge the importance of the treaties, the lasting impacts of colonization, and the continued inequities. We are dedicated to moving forward on a shared path of reconciliation and partnership. We are all treaty people and are grateful to live, work, play, and play on this land. I would invite everyone to take a moment to reflect on your current location and your relationship with the lands, waters, air, and animals around you. While you do this, I would also invite attendees, if you would like, to share your name, role, and location in the chat. So to provide an overview of the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute, I have a short video that we recently finalized that I am pleased to share with you. I think you're the first group of folks outside of our organization to see it. So I'll play that right now. And if, Louise, you could give me a thumbs up if sound and everything is coming through clearly for you.
Think about the role you play in creating environments and opportunities that support children, youth, and families. As a provincial nonprofit organization, we support service providers, educators, and communities to increase the health and well-being of children, from preconception through childhood. At the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute, this vision has guided us since 1980. We offer more than just information. Our unique approach turns research and evidence into practical, easy-to-use resources that will inform your work and can be shared with families and communities. We also provide education and training opportunities on a wide range of topics to help you stay at the forefront of best practices in your field. Visit us online to learn more about how we can support you in building healthier communities across Saskatchewan.
Imagine a world where every child grows up healthy, safe, and able to achieve their full potential.
Our goal is healthy children.
Wonderful. So without further ado, I am pleased to introduce Dr. Louise de Lannoy. She completed her PhD at Queen's University in clinical exercise physiology. Her interests in population health and knowledge translation led her to join the Healthy Active Living and Obesity Research Team at the CHEO Research Institute in 2020, where she became involved and helped grow Outdoor Play Canada into the non-for-profit organization that it is today. Louise is passionate about finding daily joy and wonder outdoors environmental stewardship, and thinking creatively and collaboratively about whole of community challenges. She can't believe her luck in finding such a joyous, satisfying, and playful form of work that aligns almost magically with these passions. Outside of Outdoor Play Canada, Louise enjoys exploring Ottawa by running, cycling, skiing, and winding down at the end of the day with her partner Jeff and their geriatric puppy. Thank you so much, Louise. Welcome, and I will pass it on to you. I'll stop sharing and you can share your presentation.
Thanks so much, Beth. Just give me a moment here. Oh, just need permissions. Perfect. Can everyone see that? Beth, can you see that? Yes, perfect.
Good to go. Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you to the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute for having me today. It's my great honor to share the next 90 minutes or so with you to talk about some of the work that our organization has been doing and many others in alignment with our mission and vision. I know we just went through a land acknowledgement. I am Outdoor Play Canada is based out of Ottawa, which is on the unceded and unsurrendered Mohawk, Algonquin, and Anishinaabe territory. We have recently started to expand our land acknowledgement, and the first two paragraphs of this land acknowledgement was actually gifted to us by an elder. And I love it so much that I know that there's land acknowledgement, but I wanted to share it anyway. And here it goes. As we come together today, we are reminded that the projects that we are developing are at their core about repairing our relationship with the land and with each other as caretakers and stewards of the land. And so we acknowledge the traditional land defenders who have been here for millennia and who are still here. In our day-to-day, each time we step outside, it is an opportunity to breathe the fresh air, admire the rich biodiversity, thank the ancestors who sustained these lands so that we can benefit from them today, and consider how future generations will benefit from the time, energy, and intention we each put into it. We have a responsibility to carry forward these teachings. Outdoor Play Canada is a national not-for-profit organization that serves to bring together advocates, practitioners, researchers, and organizations to promote, protect, and preserve access to play in nature and the outdoors for all people living in Canada. And we always underline the all because we feel that play doesn't end when you stop being a child. Just one moment, I'm going to just exit off of my email so that that doesn't keep happening. Apologies for that. There. No one likes to hear an email buzz during the webinar. Our vision is for outdoor play to be a valued part of daily life for all people living in Canada. And we aim to achieve this mission and vision by providing strategic leadership to, promoting connection and collaboration with, amplifying the successes of, and serving as a central hub for the outdoor play sector in Canada. And so webinars like this really do help us meet these strategic priorities and these actions by promoting connection and collaboration, by amplifying the successes of those involved in promoting outdoor play, and then again, serving as that central hub. And so throughout this presentation, if there's anything that sparks an idea within you, I encourage you to reach out, because many of the projects we're currently leading and have led in the past have resulted because of just casual conversations on, we don't have the data for that, or have you ever considered this, or that population isn't properly served currently, and they don't have access to outdoor play. And so, yes, this is my open invitation to reach out if any of what I speak about today sparks an idea and you're interested in potentially collaborating. You never know what might happen.
For today, I'm going to start off with a few definitions and some evidence. I'll invite you to do some personal reflecting on play. We'll talk about some of the typical barriers to outdoor play and some resources that can help address those barriers. And then in groups, we'll go through an online tool called, it's through the outsideplay.org website, where actually most of this material that I've curated for today's webinar is based off of. It's Dr. Mariana Brusoni's research group. She's a board member of Outdoor Play Canada. I asked if I could adapt some of her tools for webinars such as this one. She very obligingly said yes. So again, if anything that I've said today inspires you to sort of dig a bit deeper, then you can always go to the outsideplay.org's website to learn a bit more. So what is play? If I had $1 for the number of conversations I've had on how to define play, I mean, I don't know that I would be rich, but I would, be better off potentially. For such a simple concept, it is so often contended and discussed and debated. We use this definition, which is engagement in activity that is fun and or rewarding and usually driven by intrinsic motivation. So a few things of note here. First of all, we don't make this specific to children because we feel, again, that play doesn't only apply to children, but of people of all ages. We say that it's fun and or rewarding because for adults, for example, play could be more on the rewarding side than the immediately fun side. Some people call this type 2 fun. And usually driven by intrinsic motivation because if, for example, a parent pushes their child to join a soccer league and that child ends up having fun in the soccer game, in the soccer league, are they still playing? I would argue yes, even if it was not intrinsically motivated to do so. This definition was part of a 4-year project building international consensus on terms related to outdoor play, learning, and teaching. This is sort of our Plato Net, which stands for Play, Learn, and Teach Outdoors Network, is sort of our international branch of Outdoor Play Canada. There's sort of an open membership. It's free to join. So if you're interested in engaging more in outdoor play, learning, and teaching initiatives, please join us. So in terms of the types of play that exist, I mean, there are many. Some of the main ones that we think of are outdoor play, active play, free unstructured play, nature play. And the big one that I'll spend a decent amount of time on today is adventurous or risky play. So outdoor play, we define as sort of that root term of play, but simply that one that takes place outdoors. Similarly with active play, that root term of play that I mentioned earlier that involves physical activity of any intensity. And then risky play is that big one that people like to debate and talk about. And that's that form of play that is thrilling and exciting, which involves uncertainty, unpredictability, and varying degrees of risk-taking. Risky play, really when we're talking about risky play, it's the type of play that used to exist, but has disappeared from children's lives. So I'm a child of the 80s and 90s. I'm also the youngest of 5 children. So I had maybe a unique opportunity to engage in tons of risky play in an era in which safetyism began to prevail above all else. I was given freedom to roam, general instructions of return when the street lights turned on. I didn't have a cell phone. I had all sorts of bumps and bruises and scabs on my knees with scars remaining to this day. And I would argue that I'm probably better for it. But what we've seen over the last few decades is that this type of play has disappeared from children's lives. And so in order to identify it, measure its disappearance, and hopefully measure its reappearance into children's lives, it was important to define this type of play, and also so that we can make sure that when we're talking about this form of play, it's the same between research groups, between organizations, between educators and researchers, policymakers, etc. So this is why we sort of define this. Some groups use the term adventurous play because this feels a little bit more acceptable and less fear-provoking by parents and educators, but in my opinion, it's sort of, it dilutes the idea of risk is essential to children's health and well-being. We need to incorporate and have children allow for children the opportunity to challenge themselves and engage in risk. And so that's why we use this term. Ellen Sandsetter, back in her PhD thesis, defined 8 types of risky play, actually 6, but then expanded to include 8. And so here are those sort of 8 general categories. So high speed, tobogganing is a classic example of a high speed risky play. Play from great heights, so climbing a tree is also a great example there. In the last decade, maybe almost 2 decades, the number of injuries, serious injuries resulting from a child climbing up a tree and falling are 0 in Canada. So this is not actually considered, a major threat to children's long-term health and well-being. And yet there's so much fear around children climbing trees. Play with dangerous tools. This photograph, or the series of photographs, was actually pulled from a UK childcare program where children were in fact using these tools. What you may not be able to see within these frames are that a parent or an adult who's very close by has had an entire conversation on how to safely handle these tools and is observing children using these tools throughout the entire process. What you can see is that each of these children are focusing, that the child with the hammer has learned how to use personal protective equipment in the form of that glove to save themselves from a damaged thumb. The child on the left has learned to use both hands. It's very important to use both hands when you're drilling. And so this is, classic. It, in my opinion, also provokes a little bit of fear in terms of using dangerous tools. I still get nervous, but that's probably because I wasn't really exposed to using tools at a young age, and probably to my own detriment. Play near dangerous elements. So playing near a fire is a classic example. I feel like every child gets fascinated with bonfires, so an easy one to incorporate into everyday life, at least in the summer. Rough and tumble play, if you have a lot of siblings or just children around your age, your child has children around their age. This is, again, sort of one of those classic examples of risky play. Disappearing and getting lost is an interesting one because this looks very different. And I would argue that all risky play types look different across the ages. But for the very early years, this can be engaged in by having the child feel the sense that they're not being watched, when in fact a parent, an educator is close by. And so a child could be under a chair, behind a table, where they're actually in full view, but they have that sensation of being hidden. And that is again, a supportive type of play. Play at impact, classic examples: jumping into water, jumping into snowbanks, piles of leaves. Everyone loves to do that. And then vicarious play. Vicarious play is an interesting one for 2 specific populations. So children who are not quite ready to engage in more risky play. This is an excellent opportunity for them to observe others engaging in risky play so that they can then assess, learn, and then eventually engage in that type of behavior. It's also useful for any child who is experiencing disability and may otherwise be unable to participate in that type of play, in risky play, I would say. And so this is one of the newer forms of risky play that has quite a bit of value for a variety of different populations of children. When we're talking about risk, it's important to note that this is very distinct from hazard. A risk is a challenge or uncertainty within the environment that the child can recognize and learn to manage by choosing to encounter them while determining their own limits. Whereas a hazard is a danger in the environment that could seriously injure or endanger a child and is beyond their capacity to recognize. So a child may be interested in engaging in some risky play by jumping in and out of some shallow water, and that would be considered a classic example of risky play. But a hazardous situation would be if that child doesn't recognize that there are rapids, fast-moving water nearby, and there's a high risk of them getting swept up. That would be considered a hazard, and not something that we advocate for. The reason why I bring up the notion of risky play and have spent so much time on it is because there's been a huge amount of information that has been collected over the last decade, more so, on the benefits of risky play for children's health and well-being. So much so that the Canadian Pediatric Society in 2024 published a position statement on the value of outdoor risky play for children's health and well-being, in which they outline that it is essential for children's health and development and recommend that pediatricians, educators, and families promote risky play whenever possible. So to be endorsed by the Canadian Pediatric Society, I don't know if there's a stronger endorsement for risky play for children's health and well-being. And if you'd like to learn more, that position statement is publicly available on the Canadian Pediatric Society website. We also hosted a webinar with them, with the leaders of that position statement, and that's available through our website and on YouTube. Dr. Mariana Brusoni, who helped support the development of this position statement, she's also a board member with Outdoor Play Canada. She has worked very closely with Jonathan Haidt, which many of you may know of because he wrote The Anxious Generation. He actually flew to Vancouver to meet with her to write an entire chapter of his book. And since that initial interaction has had many collaborations with Mariana, including her writing a few blog posts for his Substack. And in one of them, she wrote this, and I love to pull out this quote because I find it so powerful. What she says is that what kids are dying from today are mainly car crashes and suicides, not playing outside unsupervised with friends. Parents are worrying about the wrong causes of injury and harm. In fact, the very strategies that parents use to try to keep their children safe, driving them around, maximizing supervision, minimizing freedom, are unintentionally increasing the likelihood of injury and even death. Powerful stuff. If you're looking for a little bit more evidence on these associations between risky play and children's health and well-being, again, I'm pulling a lot of stuff from Mariana's lab because she is really the preeminent leader in risky play research, at least in Canada. And her team led an intervention which they transformed 2 outdoor early child education spaces in Vancouver. The budgets were not enormous, but what they did was add things like, so on the right-hand side is the photograph of that transformed space. They created circuits for children to be able to run around or scooter around at higher speeds. They created different elevations so that children could jump off different heights. They created sort of that barrier around that tent space, so there was a hidey hole for children to hide in, and then also a number of natural elements. And what they found was that this transformation led to increases in play with natural materials, independent play, pro-social behavior, improved socialization, problem-solving, focus, self-regulation, creativity, self-confidence, decreases in depressive affect, antisocial behavior, reductions in stress, boredom, and injury. The list was pretty robust. The other thing that they did was they took recordings of children's play before and after the intervention, which is how they informed all these measurements of the changes in the types of play. What they found early on, or before the intervention, was that there was a decent amount of roughhousing, but not rough and tumble play, like aggressive levels of rough and tumble play where children weren't agreeing on both sides to engage in that type of play. What they found afterwards was that there was a lot more social play and communicative play. And even among those children who were exhibiting antisocial behaviors before the intervention, either they were able to engage in pro-social behaviors after the intervention, and in situations where they weren't ready to engage in those types of behaviors, exhibited that vicarious play. So watching and observing the type of play that children were engaging in. So as far as the continuum of play goes, if you go outside, children are going to be more active. Engaging will have greater opportunities for risky play, and that comes with a number of benefits. And if you can bring children to natural spaces, that has even additional benefits. So this study was led by colleagues from Norway, in which, again, they conducted an intervention of 2 childcare programs, and they looked at the effect of introducing a number of natural materials into the childcare yard on children's immune systems. And so they took swabs of children's skin, their tongue, their gut microbiota, and they also took a number of blood samples. And what they found was that after only 1 month, the forest-based yard improved the immune system of children in childcare. So a pretty remarkable impact of just introducing a few natural elements. So the theory of why risky play is so important, especially for children's mental health, is essentially that, there's a bit of a flow diagram here, but the essence of this is that if you provide the physical and the social environment that allows children opportunities to engage in risky play, they're then, of course, exposed to these fear-provoking situations. They then are also then faced with their own levels of increased anxiety, physiological arousal, so sweaty palms, increased heart rate. And then they're, of course, as a result, given these opportunities to recognize those feelings, to observe the situation that they're in and learn how to deal with them. So ideally, children would be exposed to risky play situations. Again, risky play is the type of play where children can choose to interact. And so typically it's at the level where they experience challenge, but not at a level where they're unable to manage that level of risk or hazard. The idea is that when they're introduced to this experience, they then learn how to manage those feelings of stress and anxiety. And so when they're given similar situations or new and elevated levels of risk, they then learn again how to tolerate those levels or learn when it is too much. And that's really important for when children grow up and become adults and are likely going to face much riskier situations and need to learn when to say yes, when to say no, and how to handle each. So in summary, essentially, in order for children to tolerate uncertainty, they need the opportunity to feel uncertain. Okay, I'm going to pause now with all the evidence, and I invite you now to do a little bit of reflecting. So I invite you to think back to your favorite childhood play memory. And I know everyone's screens are off, so that's great. Take a minute or two and think back to your favorite childhood play memory. What were you doing? Who were you with? Where were you? What were you feeling? What were the sounds, sights, and smells you were experiencing? Oh, apologies. And I'll give just a minute for everyone to reflect on those memories. And if you're comfortable, I encourage you and I invite you to submit some of your memories into the chat, into the Q&A chat box. And Beth, if there are any that are popping up, please let me know. I'd love to share with the group.
Absolutely. Maybe I'll share mine while folks are also thinking. So one of the memories that really pops up for me and reminds me of childhood is over the summers in elementary school, the neighborhood kids and I would always play cops and robbers. So I have vivid memories of running around the neighborhood, hopping through. We had quite a few folks that had backing backyards, so jumping over fences, running through back alleys, and like just getting into some interesting situations where we're hiding under bushes or just climbing up trees to try and hide or get away from people, and just that exhilaration and that freedom. But yeah, also that connectedness just with not only my friends and the other kids that were playing, but also just with knowing my community and knowing how to navigate it, and it always being different every single time we played. There was always a new place to explore, a new spot that we found. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing that. That's so beautiful. And neat to reflect on always a new place where things were always different, because that's the neat thing with outdoor spaces, right? It could be the same space, but it changes with the seasons, changes when there's snow, when there's ice, when there are leaves, and it creates new opportunities every time.
So we have a couple comments in the chat, so I'll just read those out. So Chastity shared one of hers is playing Christmas time in the snow with her sister, so making igloos and presents out of the snow. And then Healthier Families, they share going to the corner store with their best friend in the neighborhood, feeling happiness and joy, having cars, laughter, and the bell from the shop and people talking. And
So
then,
beautiful.
yeah, Connie, did you want to unmute yourself and share yours, or do you want me to read it off?
I can share. So yeah, just I remember playing a lot with my friends. I grew up on a farm, so we were outside all the time, and just playing make believe and playing with the animals.
Thanks for sharing, Connie. I grew up in Toronto, but my uncle owned a farm outside of Ottawa, and so my mom would send us for a couple of weeks every summer to his farm. And one of my most distinct childhood memories was we had a whole day where we had to bale hay. And so we sat on the truck, and I have this distinct memory. It was sunny outside. We'd spent all day, in pretty tough physical labor, hauling these giant bales of hay onto the tractor. But I felt like I was responsible for something, that I contributed, that I did this with my siblings and my cousins, and the sun was beaming, and I had that like self-satisfaction feeling. Nothing better. Maybe because it was a unique experience. I bet if it was all the time, that would have been different. But that to me really stood out.
That's awesome. We have a couple more that I can share in the chat. So Devin shared swimming in the river, jumping off of roofs, joyriding on ATVs, running up and down the arches of the bridge in Tantalon. I'm not sure where that is or if I'm pronouncing it right. Sounds like a lot of fun adventures. And then we have Elizabeth shared, Dad always built a snow hill in our backyard. Mom always sent us outside for us to play after supper. I don't, I wouldn't dig forts, take out the back fence so we could toboggan into the back alley, ice pack, play hide and seek. And then she also said, my classmates and I were in grade 3, 4, and 5 and had a standing date for kick the can. We've got a couple more. So Megan shared we had a crab apple war with my cousins. I remember those. Brother and male cousins on the roof of a shed with me and my female cousins down below chucking crab apples at each other. So much fun in the summer. And then Kathy also shared kick the can in my rural hometown. All ages came together and had the best of time. And then we've got, they would dig forts. That was what one of the earlier messages was about. And then Devin also added Ding Dong Ditch was another another memory that came to mind for him.
Well, thank you to everyone for sharing that. I was smiling through it. I hope that you were as well, but points of sheer joy. Something that, or maybe you were prompted, but pretty remarkable is that not a single one of those memories was inside. And most of them, I would argue, would be considered risky play. So well done. Now thinking back to that same childhood play memory, were you inside or outside? We have already answered that. Most of these tended to be outside. Were you taking risks, like I just mentioned? So it sounded like there was a lot of playing at heights, playing with, I don't know, with dangerous tools and elements of cranberries, cranberries count as that, or crab apples, but with pieces for sure. Rough and tumble play, disappearing and getting lost was certainly within those examples. And we've gone through these already, so maybe I'll continue, but here are just some more additional examples. Running, jumping, playing on playground equipment. So much of these things I heard already in those examples, and thank you so much for sharing. So now I invite you to think, why was this play memory so important to you? I invite you to think about, what did you get out of it? How did this experience influence you? And here are just a couple of examples of how you might reflect on how these experiences may have influenced you. And I, again, encourage you to take just a minute or two to reflect back on those memories, maybe the same ones that you've thought of, or other ones as well. Beth, anything standing out to you?
Yeah, for me, and I think a couple other people included it in their descriptions as well, was joy was a big one that just came through. And I think just testing my limits and seeing what I was capable of. I especially in elementary school, hated shoes. So running around barefoot, it was like the best thing ever, and started off in the grass, but then towards the end of the summer when I had built up all of those calluses, and it was like, oh, I can run through this place. It'll be fine. It was covered in rocks, but it was just seeing what my body was capable of and just getting that thrill and excitement of not knowing what was going to happen next, and that freedom to explore and not have those restrictions on where I needed to go. So sometimes we would expand beyond our little neighborhood, and yeah, there were no limits on things. And similar to what you said, when the street lights came on, that was your indication. Okay, it's time to get back home, have some food, have something to drink, have supper. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Freedom, a big piece of that was freedom.
Yeah, and we've got one person who shared that for Kick the Can. It was completely led by us kids. There was no adult insight, which is a great comment. Then we've got Devin said thrill was something that he experienced. And then Connie said connection to nature.
Yeah. I was just reading an article on the value of foraging for building connection to nature and connection to specific spaces. We did that a lot of as kids, actually, foraging for mushrooms, and I never thought about how important it was for building that sense of stewardship and connection, but definitely was.
So we've got a couple more comments. So we've got Chastity shared freedom and autonomy. And I apologize, Devin, I used he pronouns a couple of times. It should be she. And then Megan also shared a sense of belonging. It was the family we didn't see that often.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing, everyone. Okay. Last layer. Well, I guess so normally I do these in breakout groups, but I invite you to sort of hold all these pieces together. So you thought about what you were doing, who you were with, what you were, where you were, what you were feeling, the sounds and sights and smells, the levels or the integrated levels of risk throughout it all. And it's sort of memorable and lasting impact on you, of course, which is why you remember it so fondly. And we're not going to do breakout groups today. But this, what I've been hearing throughout the chat really resonates with what we found back in 2015 when Dr. Mark Tremblay, who's the founder of Outdoor Play Canada, he led the development of the 2015 Position Statement on Active Outdoor Play, in which they pulled together the best available evidence around the world in terms of its relationship, the physiological and mental health benefits of active outdoor play. And what they found was that when children are outdoors, they move more, sit less, and play longer, that they learn to balance risky play and their own safety, that all of these behaviors are associated with improved physiological markers like blood pressure, cardiorespiratory, and musculoskeletal fitness. And something that is so important today is that it's associated with increased resilience, self-regulation, and the ability to manage stress. What's pretty remarkable about this area of research is that in 2015, those were the main observations on the benefits of active outdoor play. And nearly 10 years later, what we're seeing is that the evidence is consistent, that there is a positive and multiple levels of benefit for active outdoor play for children's health and well-being. And we're additionally seeing newer and newer ways in which there are benefits. So we see benefits in terms of promoting children's balance, their social skills, their emotional development, the quality of the play and the way they interact with others, that nature relatedness that we just talked about, and awareness of nature, social play, creative play. And this is important because there are a lot of areas of research where 10 years ago, experts were saying one thing and now it's the complete opposite. And this is not the case. And that's fairly unique. If anything, that, that should really give us confidence that it's important, it's essential for children's health and well-being. This is also important because I've talked so much about the benefit of active outdoor play for children's mental health. And in 2018, so pre-pandemic, the Mental Health Commission of Canada came out with this report where they identified that 1.2 million Canadian children and youth are affected by mental illness. And as you can imagine, things have gotten a little worse since the pandemic. And yet, what is remarkable is that active outdoor play continues to be one of those things that helps children through mental health crises and building their resiliency. So this is work published out of Maximum City, colleagues out of Toronto, in which they divided school-aged children into two groups: those who maintained their play throughout the pandemic and those whose play decreased. And they found consistently across a number of different indicators related to children's ability to perform in school that those whose play was maintained throughout the pandemic performed better in school engagement, in learning, in collaboration, perseverance, concentration, and managing stress. These observations were so stark and so defined by preserving play that Josh Fullen, the director of Maximum City, provided this quote, where he said, "A year into studying and listening to the experiences of thousands of young children and teens during the pandemic, I am frankly surprised to be writing that play is emerging as the most powerful correlating factor to their well-being. More than race, income, or location, changes in playtime are a dividing line between young Canadians who report doing fine or even thriving during the pandemic and those who say they are struggling at school and in their personal lives." And I know perhaps we're sick of talking about the pandemic, but I keep this in here because there were a lot of learning opportunities from the pandemic, and I don't want us to lose those. So if there's one thing, we can take is that outdoor time was precious and was really essential to our resiliency during the pandemic. It's probably not the last time we're going to be faced with another health crisis, and so we need to remember what worked. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that despite the multiple benefits of active outdoor play for children's health and well-being, Canadian children are consistently not getting enough active play time. This grade was from the 2024 Participation Report Card on Children and Youth's Physical Activity Levels. This report card comes out every 2 years, where researchers pool together the best available evidence in Canada. They also commission a number of analyses from StatsCan and from a number of other groups to, again, pull together evidence on the association between children's movement behaviors, so sedentary time, physical activity, active play, sleep, community supports, all related to physical activity. And then based on that data, they assign children and youth in Canada a grade in terms of how well they're doing. And in 2024, Canadian children and youth were assigned a D- in terms of active play, because only 22% of children and youth were accumulating at least or more than 2 hours per day of unstructured play. Now, this is obviously alarming. If any parent saw that their child was receiving a D- on any kind of class, they would obviously be alarmed. The other thing that is particularly alarming is that we haven't actually gotten that much better. Since 2010, we've been hovering around the F to D- to D. 2016, there was one D+, and we've never returned back to that great D+. So my point being is that whatever we've been doing to try to support children's active play is not working. And so perhaps it's time to start rethinking our strategies. Also within this report is they identified some areas of weakness in terms of data collection. And so they found that there's not a whole lot of information on how to support children with disabilities in active play, and especially when it comes to nature, and that they sought to receive further information from early child educators, families, and school level educators on how to support active play and what are those major barriers in terms of supporting active play amongst children and youth. Okay, I'm going to go back to some reflections here. So now that you've thought about your own childhoods, I now invite you to start thinking about the children that are playing at your school, at your program. If you're not involved in a school or a program, and you have your own children, I invite you to think about them as well. And I first invite you to think about how these children currently play. Here are a few examples, and I'll just give everyone a minute.
I'll just share a couple comments in the chat. So a couple slides ago, when you talked about Dr. Tremblay, Dr. Mark Tremblay, Kathy wanted to share that Mark is coming to Moose Jaw in May and provided the link to that. And then Healthier Families provided a comment to your question about how children are currently playing. They said inactive play is primarily due to electronics.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a 6-year-old. And yeah, reflecting on how I played as a child versus how he is playing, is a little bit different. I am very interested in outdoor and risky play, and obviously through my work at the Prevention Institute have exposure to some of those benefits and information about it. So I really try and integrate it. And I was fortunate as well. His daycare was very outdoor based and led, so he has gotten a lot of exposure to it, and his confidence, he's a very shy kid, has been almost a complete 180, just as you mentioned in earlier on in the presentation, all those benefits about kind of pushing pushing out of your comfort zone, testing your limits and your skills, and building those skills. We've got a few more comments. So Gail says inactive play due to smaller play spaces outdoors, both at home and at early learning centers. And then Healthier Families adds to their earlier comment about electronics, and said, electronics are not evil, it's the balance. We will figure it out eventually, which I think is, yeah, a very, very true statement.
Yeah, I would agree with that, I'm not advocating for throwing your phones out the window. They have they're very useful items, but finding that balance and making sure that we're still getting outside, that we're still engaging with our community and with one another in real time. It's particularly important.
Yeah, one thought I also wanted to share is one difference I think that I've really seen is play structures. I feel like as a kid I used them a lot more. I think kids use them for a shorter period of time. They almost run out of ideas of ways to use them or interact with them. And I find that there's more, it takes longer, or there's more kind of prompting maybe, or pushing from educators or parents, for kids to kind of come up with creative ideas for just being outside and making up games, or yeah, something to keep them from not being quote unquote bored.
You
Which
know, and that could be twofold, right? It could be because children aren't used to playing, and so they need to be reintroduced or introduced to how to play. But the other piece is that some playgrounds have been designed with safety as the paramount feature, and so they're not engaging enough, and so kids get bored easily. If you get those two pieces interacting together, then you know it's no wonder that kids may not be engaging outside all that much.
we've got one more comment. So Connie said that she's noticed that there are more restrictions on what kids are allowed to play. Sometimes for trying to manage risks. And then Elizabeth also commented, we moved to a small town to try to retain as much outdoor and risky play for my children as possible. I have had to defend my decision to my kids' pediatrician for them and walking to and from school.
Thank you for sharing that. That pediatrician clearly hasn't read the position statement on risky play. Luckily, it's freely available, and I encourage you to maybe print a copy or send an email to your pediatrician so that they're aware, if not already.
It's great also that you're advocating for your kids.
Mhm.
Can be challenging.
Mhm.
Okay, we've got one more comment. Healthier Families wrote, I love the monkey bars. Watching my grandchildren race or be timed is amazing. Creating obstacles by themselves is the most rewarding.
Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. That's it's good to see that that not all hope has been lost. It's that there is some active play there, that parents are advocating and pushing for this, recognizing its value. So that's wonderful to see. Despite the fact that we know that screens and social media are sort of this ongoing challenge, and we're constantly thinking about ways to achieve that balance. So in terms of to that note of the excess screen time, I think we spoke to this a little bit more, but I invite you, if you wrote down some examples of play that you observe children engaging in that are maybe less active, maybe less interactive with other children, I now invite you to write down some of the ways that you would like them to be able to play. So if it's just off screens is an easy enough example, but would you wish for them to be engaging more in things like climbing trees, playing on playground equipment, regardless if it's risky or not, playing with natural elements, so getting into the sand, the sticks, and the mud? I encourage you to write those things down. And I think I'm going to move on simply because I think it may get a little repetitive, but for your own purposes, because we're going to go into some action items next, I encourage you to think of what would I love for them to be doing and engaging in. And then the next piece is, what is one main reason why you want to support children's outdoor play opportunities? Here are just a few examples, but I encourage you to come up with your own if you'd like. And again, please share them in the Q&A chat. I would say for me as a movement advocate, as a physical activity physiologist, promoting physical activity and movement is maybe not the main reason, but is definitely sort of one of those underlying pieces that I'm always thinking about. But I'd say maybe the higher level piece is that connection to nature. I think that's just so important for building not just resiliency and stewardship, but building hope too. If we know how to take care of the land, perhaps we can think about ways to remediate and not just sustain, but actually improve.
One of the points that you have on the slide, to build relationships with the land and nature, it made me think of my partner is First Nations, and summertime is powwow season, so we're always off to powwows. And from it's been at least a few years, my son, whenever people ask him about summer or what's his favorite thing to do, it's always, oh, powwows, but outdoor powwows. Like there's something about that added connection with land and connection with nature, that it just resonates with him. And I know for myself, thinking back to my childhood, I always just felt so at ease, and the stress melted away, and I felt more level-headed whenever I played outside. It didn't matter necessarily what I was doing, and sometimes I had to kick myself in the bottom in order to to get that first step outside. But yeah, just having that ability to navigate nature and to have those mental health aspects are, I think, big things that for myself, I'd love to pass on to my son, in addition to the cultural components of the land.
Thanks so much for sharing, Beth.
We've got a couple comments. So we have Connie shared, so that children can have those same types of meaningful memories that I have had from when I was growing up. Chastity shared, to support curiosity and exploration of their world, or pardon me, of their world, not ours.
Mm.
And then Healthier Family shared garbage collecting around the town, rock picking, hiking. I love that idea. Enjoying sunshine.
It's a big thing. Enjoying sunshine no matter the season, especially important in the wintertime.
And then we have a couple more comments. So Megan shared, I want them to find that sense of curiosity about the world around them that I had. Elizabeth shared, my grandma always used to say, if you are having a bad day, go into water or go outdoors.
Beautiful. Wise grandmother.
And then Devin shared, she wants to build, it says that it builds compassion and that appreciation for living things.
Sure.
Then we've got one more. So Zachary said, explore creativity in nature, thinking of different ways to play.
For sure. Yeah, that's a great example. Having all those loose parts, right? So unique to the outdoors. Well, thanks again for this very active engagement. I love it. It's there's so much passion here, which is always so encouraging. So thank you. The next thing I invite you to do is think about how you currently support children's outdoor play at your school, at your program. So here are maybe just a few examples. I invite you to think about how you support children's outdoor play. And I think maybe we'll hold these to just ourselves, and I'll move on just for the sake of time. But yeah, reflect on those ways that you're actually making sure that children are getting outside. And I think from this group, there's probably no shortage of examples, simply because they're clearly we're amongst the choir here. And then next, I invite you to think about what gets in your way the most in supporting children's outdoor play. And so is it injury or liability? Is it parents, colleagues, or licensing officers not supporting play? We heard from a pediatrician not supporting their play, that the space is not good enough. I heard that example as well. Or maybe it's your own ability to manage children's risk-taking, for example. And so given some of these examples, and I think we've already shared, so I'm going to move on, but thinking about what gets in the way the most in terms of supporting children's outdoor play, I wanted to pick on a few that are sort of some of the most common. So worrying about injury and liability is a big one. And luckily there are some resources to support educators, program leaders in managing those concerns. So the risk benefit assessment toolkit is an excellent toolkit that is specifically for those working with children, their managers, and their employers. It's a PDF document. It's available on our website. It was developed by the Child Nature Alliance of Canada. It's a number of tools that work to promote competency and best practices in balancing those risks that are inherent to outdoor play. Most importantly, it was reviewed by legal counsel and takes into account what is reasonable in terms of professional duty of care. And so that should give you some comfort in knowing that this is a legally reviewed document. It's not just something that a bunch of advocates put together. It is, but then it was reviewed by legal counsel. And again, it's publicly available on our website and through the Child Nature Alliance of Canada website as well. But I find it sometimes a little bit more difficult to navigate to get to it through theirs. In that toolkit, there are a number of different tools, but one of the things that they advocate for and they talk about is that dynamic risk-benefit assessment process. So where the majority of your time should be an open observation, if the levels of risk-taking that are occurring amongst children get higher, then maybe you need to focus in on what they're doing and providing some check-ins of, hey, have you thought about where your both hands are going? Have you given that stick enough room? And then if things elevate even further, that's only when you would actually intervene in order to immediately reduce that potential hazard and reduce the risk level. It also provides a number of really useful forms that you can use. Ideally, you wouldn't have to use these forms over time, but if you're introducing risk, if you're trying to use this for the first time, not only do they have sort of a pre-filled example, but they also have a number of blank sheets that you can print off. And of note, they have a big section where you can highlight the benefits of engaging in this type of behavior. We also have risks because we identify that it's a benefit risk assessment. And then most importantly, they create a space for you to think about actions to address those significant risks. The other thing that's a common concern is worrying about parents, colleagues, or licensing officers who don't support outdoor play. So like I mentioned before, the Canadian Pediatric Society, their position statement is an excellent tool to refer to. Not only does it outline the best available evidence on the benefits of risky outdoor play for children's health and well-being, it also links to a number of different resources for you to read more and to think about strategies for supporting risky play. Like I mentioned, we have that webinar that you can listen to or you can share if you want to learn more about that position statement. I also mentioned the Anxious Generation earlier. That's an excellent book. It talks about how this current generation of sort of teens into early 20s, how their mental health has really been significantly and negatively impacted by social media and screens. But it is not a fear-mongering book. What is cool about it is that it talks about the data and then it ends with a number of action items on what you as individuals and as communities can do to address these challenges. It also comes in an audiobook, which is helpful. If you can't borrow the book from the library, if you don't want to buy it, he also has an excellent Substack where I pulled that quote from Dr. Mariana Brusoni. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is that there's a lot of fear around bringing children outside because there's sort of constantly this sensation that if you have control over their environment and keep them inside, that will make them more safe. And yet children are 8 times more likely to die as a passenger in a motor vehicle than when outside on foot or on bike. And so to that quote that Mariana provided, the things that parents are typically doing to try to keep their children safe are actually elevating their levels of risk. Stranger abduction is sort of a common one that really gained traction in terms of fear-mongering in the 80s and 90s. But based on, I think this is a bit dated this is about 8 or 10 years old, but the odds of total stranger abduction are about 1 in 14 million. I know that still means that it does occur, but the level of risk, again, when you're thinking about what are the impacts of not allowing children what are the benefits you're holding back when you're not allowing children to go outside? How is that balancing with the impacts of them staying inside? Of course, inside is full of screens and the online world where there's potential for cyberbullying, addictions, predation. And so it's not an entirely isolated space inside, at least not anymore. And the last piece is that people often don't trust their own ability to manage children's risk-taking. And so just checking the time here. For the last 15, 20 minutes or so that I have with you, I wanted to introduce you to this online tool. This is freely available, so you can return to this on your own time, but we'll take a minute or two, or a few minutes, to go through just an example of this. It's an online tool where they create a personalized journey for you with self-reflection questions and choose your own adventure video scenarios of various different levels of risk-taking. It was informed by focus groups with early child educators, early learning and childcare administration, and licensing officers, where they identified sort of those key issues and those needs and those challenges in promoting outdoor risky play. Where the goal of this tool is to increase adults' capacity and comfort level with supporting risky play. And then at the end, like we've gone through, coming up with sort of a behavior change goal. What is their what is one thing that you can do to change to actually improve children's opportunities for risky play? And it looks like this. Well, I should update that. It's now outsideplay.org. And so now I'm just going to stop sharing and then share an example of one of these. And let's see. Everyone see that? Beth? Yeah, good. Now if the sound doesn't work, that's actually that's actually okay, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to suggest let's do the play at heights because that's always a good one. And I think you probably can't hear the sound, but essentially it comes up with these scenarios. So, hey, Jasmine, do you want to come up, come play up here too? It's fun. Jasmine's looking and assessing the situation, starting to climb up. The friend says there's a good place to grab with your hands here, and you can put your feet there. Very supportive. And now you're prompted, what would you do? So do you keep an eye on Jasmine and see how she gets on, or do you give her a hand and intervene? Let's try intervening first. That word, that phrase, be careful, may be used. It's not all that instructive. There's a lot of push to avoid or stop using that word, be careful. What does it mean? It doesn't actually instruct a child on how to actually manage their situation. So the educator says, this is too dangerous for you to climb up on your own. Next time, make sure you call me so I can help you up. Jasmine doesn't look all that happy, and there we go. The proposed alternative is to guide the child, to guide Jasmine. I like the way you're climbing, using both your hands and feet and maintaining 3 points of contact. What's your next move? So instead of saying something like, be careful, I'm going to help you, what's your next move? And Jasmine comes up with an idea. I'm going to grab on there and pull up my foot up here. And she figures out how to do it herself. Okay, I'm going to go back to my slide deck. So that was just one example of these videos that are available. But as you can see, there's 6 different scenarios, and this is just an invitation for you to think through how could you and how might you manage risk when encountering things like rough and tumble play. There's even a piece on communicating with parents and caregivers when you want to support play, but you come up against that resistance. And so these are a great tool you can do on your own time. As you notice, they're very brief. But are also helpful in terms of just giving you some of that language to use to be a little bit more guiding with parents or guiding with the children, and then instructive in terms of how to communicate with parents and educators or other caregivers. I didn't go through the other pieces because we'll more or less do that here now, but it also comes with a debrief and a number of resources. So to support the evidence behind why this should be supported and why you should encourage children's risky play. And so, you know, we've talked about this a little bit, but what children get out of these experiences. And so from that climbing the tree experience, you could see that there was that independence, that sense of freedom, that sense of courage, of confidence, of achievement, and leadership on behalf of the other children in supporting their peers. And so if you do go through these other videos on your own, I encourage you to think about some of the other examples of what the children may be getting out of these experiences. And so now I invite you to now think about one thing that you can do to support children's outdoor play. And I encourage you to think of something that is concrete and attainable. Here are again just some suggestions. Of course, you can use your own, but as you'll notice, they're sort of self-contained. It could be as easy as just counting to 17 the next time you're nervous about the type of play that a child is engaging in. Or if you're already a total risky play advocate, maybe it's just scheduling more time for children's outdoor play, or sharing resources like this webinar, like the outsideplay.org tool with those that you think may not be quite on the bandwagon just yet. And that's essentially how you with all of these tools, it sort of can become your plan of action, your why on why you want to support children's outdoor play, and that one thing you can do to support children's outdoor play. And the last thing I invite you to do is think of a timeline for your goal. You're going to go home tonight and share these resources with your partner. Maybe next week, connect with one of the administrators to talk about this. Or start slowly in terms of just the next time you see the children being outside and you get a little nervous, practice counting to 17. Okay, the last thing I wanted to mention is that like we talked about earlier, active play, children are not getting enough active play. And so we need to start thinking about things a little bit differently, doing things like these webinars, encouraging people to think differently about how and why they should be supporting active outdoor play. And we at Outdoor Play Canada are trying to put our actions where our mouths are. And I've now launched the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, which is a collaboration between Outdoor Play Canada, the CHEO Research Institute, Algonquin College, and Andrew Fleck Children's Services. So our organization, a research organization, a childcare program, and a local college to do this launch of this Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play, which at its root is a nature-based early childhood education program in Ottawa that sits on 900 acres of forested land. We're very fortunate. Where on this space, on this land, we aim to inform policy, practice, and research as it relates to outdoor play and learning. By serving as a living lab, so we are conducting a 3-year study on the benefits of this program for children's health and well-being and the health and well-being of educators involved in this program in comparison to more conventional sites. We've established a national outdoor early child education panel to discuss, strategize, and implement actions to address outdoor early child education licensing and issues and constraints. We're building on current professional outdoor early child education development opportunities. So we recently launched and released an outdoor early child education framework to support educators. So colleges, for example, if they have an outdoor focused outdoor play and learning course, if they're looking to update it, this framework serves to identify what are those key pieces that, and I should say, was nationally agreed upon. So we discussed and talked to as many outdoor early childhood educators and leaders from across the country on what they identify as those key elements of training to support outdoor play and learning, and incorporate it all into a framework. So for those that are looking to advance their courses, here's a good framework. For those looking to start, here's a starting point. For those who've already developed something themselves and are looking just to maintain it, if you align with this framework, then you can say, look, I'm aligning with what is nationally agreed upon in Canada, and look at us go. And that all those resources I can send some links to you from our website. This building was just recently launched in June of 2024. Like I mentioned, as you can see, there's a lot of forest around the space. Here are just some examples of the licensed fence spaces for the children's outdoor play and learning. But of course, they do the majority of their play and learning on the land beyond those licensed spaces. And then this is us cutting the burlap ribbon on the official launch, and we saved those burlap pieces for children's loose parts play after the fact. If you want to stay connected, I encourage you to join us, and you can do so in a number of different ways. We have a community of practice. We have that international Play-Doh-Net network that is free to join. Everything is free to join. We are doing a 10-year update to the position statement on active outdoor play because in September 2025, it'll be 10 years. We've made that update global in scope. We have an international leadership group. Our steering committee is also international with over 130, almost 140 people, but it's an open call to join that, to continue contributing to that update. You can become an Outdoor Play Canada member. And we also host a summit every other year. And the next one, I thought I fixed that number, but apologies, it's September 25th to the 27th, 2025. It'll also be held in Ottawa this year. And so I encourage you to come join us. And with that, I thank you very much for your time, and thank you to our funders for supporting all the work that we do. And I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Louise. That was so informative, and I loved all of the reflection questions. And I'll definitely make sure that I connect with you to get a list of all of the resources and tools that you provided as well, because those were fantastic. So yeah, I'll open it up to our audience. If anyone has any questions, any comments, we have one comment from Connie. She says, thank you to Louise, Louise for all of this wonderful information, highlighting the importance of risky play. This is so inspirational and informative. Louise has agreed to make her slides available. Yes, that's a great reminder. Thank you for that, Connie. And she's just reminded us as well that once this webinar has concluded, we will be adding it to the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute website. And you will get a follow-up email, everyone who registered, as well as the folks that are in attendance here today, with the presentation slides and a link to the recording. I know for myself, I had so many aha moments during your presentation. I really appreciate it. One of them, when you were describing the 8 types of risky play, when you were talking about getting lost or disappearing, it had never kind of occurred to me that the definition could encompass those earlier years of hiding underneath the chair and having that sensation of feeling like they can't find you and they don't know where you went. And so I love that, because I always think to myself, well, how do you start? Because you see oftentimes the extreme ends of kids who are comfortable walking to grandma's house or whatever the case may be. And it's like, well, what are those first steps that build up those skills and confidence?
For sure. Yeah, it starts early. It starts small. My friend just shared a video where her daughter is helping her unload the dishwasher, and I think she may have taken out the knives, but she's picking up forks and spoons and things that have, sticky ends. And that's, an example of starting with those tools.
Yeah, absolutely.
I should say that daughter was 12 months old.
Oh, 12 months. Oh, wow. That's some good fine motor, some pinch grip as well.
Yeah.
That's great. We've got quite a few comments of folks who are just saying thank you, a great presentation. Jerry said, thank you for the inspiration and sharing your experience, research, strength, and hope. Best to all.
And I should say, I know that Ottawa is a bit far away, but we always love having visitors to the Canadian Centre for Outdoor Play. So if you're ever in our neck of the woods, please come say hi. We would love that. We'll take a walk through the woods.
And one question I actually had was related to, again, the 8 types of risky play. When you were talking about vicarious play, I was wondering if there's ever been any research to compare vicarious play of children watching other kids play in person versus online. I feel like there's been a big rise in the online content of YouTubers who are doing whatever and kids watching them play or watching them at children's museums or whatever the case may be. So I was wondering if you're aware of any research that kind of looks at if there is some of the benefits related to vicarious play that come or transferred over when it is in an online format.
Good question. I know that, again, Mariana is working very closely with a number of colleagues from Europe, where they're leading a project on introducing children to risky play scenarios using VR, virtual reality. And so, which is kind of cool, right? Because you can actually then expose children to risky environments without actually introducing any level of risk. And so they're using that to sort of measure children's reactions and how their reactions may evolve to different levels of risk through a learning process. I think that paper is forthcoming, but know that it is. And so there definitely will be more information on that coming soon.
Yeah, that's great to hear. I assumed it would be an emerging emerging area if it wasn't already happening.
Mhm.
We had healthier families. I'm sure they're also happier too. Um, they say now get out there and have some fun, and I think that's a great call to action and a great kind of incentive to keep the momentum of what was learned during this webinar. And I think as many people shared the inspiration and the hope to keep that momentum, keep it rolling.
Yeah, agreed. I know it's a little bit funny doing all these virtual webinars when I'm advocating to get outside and play, but
Yeah.
time and place.
Yes, for sure. I'll just check and see if we have anything in the Q&A box. I don't see anything. Connie, I'll just check in with you. Has there been anything that I've missed or not
No,
captured
I think you got it
correctly?
all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Connie, for your assistance today.
Thanks, Connie.
And yeah, again,
I
I'll get, oops, sorry, go ahead, Connie.
No, I just want to add that I love those microsites. I love the idea of looking at the two different options and how I think that might be some aha moments for parents and caregivers as to, even that word, be careful.
Yeah,
And how much I've probably said it over my life to my kids alone. And so just taking that advice of counting to 17, I think you said, and just taking that step back to let them develop those skills and to create those opportunities for them to have those accomplishments that come with risky play.
I should add that that tool, they've created a series of videos for parents and a separate series of videos for educators. So I know educators can also be parents, but there's sort of those different wings if you want to explore the different types of scenarios and level of engagement and types of engagement with kids. They also have a teacher tool that is specifically for elementary school years, where they have a number of different resources in terms of how to support risky outdoor play in elementary school. And so there's a number of resources there already. We at Outdoor Play Canada are also working on a series of videos sort of mimicking that structure on how to support outdoor and risky play for children living with disability. Again, those are forthcoming, and we'll be sure to share them out when they're ready.
That's fantastic. I love that you're expanding into folks with disabilities and just bringing in that inclusion, because that's something I hear sometimes as well, that it's hard to navigate. And I was gonna say I haven't checked out those microsites, but I'm excited. The example that you did share, I was like, this is so relatable. Like I could see myself saying that. Like it's not some far-fetched, and yeah, having that side by side of being able to say like, oh, okay, well, what's another option? And it's not necessarily saying this is the correct way or this is the wrong way, but like these are two examples of like how a situation may play out. And it's not a big shift. You're not having to completely overhaul kind of your belief system or how you approach things, but it's much more manageable and bite-sized. So I'm excited to dive deeper into those and see what other tidbits of knowledge I can gain from those.
Wonderful. Mhm.
Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions. So maybe what we'll do is we'll end it here unless you have any last words, and then I'll do a closing.
I don't think so. Just thank you, Beth, so much for having me. This was it was so wonderful, and I'm so inspired by all the comments through the Q&A. So thank you for that.
Yes, and thank you so much. It was wonderful, and hopefully we can find some ways to partner again, because you do great work, and as does Outdoor Play Canada. So again, I wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day to join us for this webinar, Outdoor and Risky Play, Reframing Perspectives Using Evidence. And of course, to Dr. Louise de Leroy for sharing your expertise with us. This was such an engaging and wonderful webinar. As a reminder, the webinar is recorded, and a copy of the presentation slides and a link to the recording will be emailed out to everyone that registered for the webinar. To learn more about the Saskatchewan Prevention Institute, please visit our website, www.skprevention.ca, and to learn more about Outdoor Play Canada, visit their website, www.outdoorplaycanada.ca. As I mentioned, I'll connect with Louise to make sure that I get a roundup of all those amazing tools, websites, and microsites, and those will be sent out to everyone. When you close this window, you will be automatically directed to a short 2-question survey. We'd really appreciate it if you completed that. We really value your feedback, and it will only take a few minutes and will help us improve future webinars. Take care, have a wonderful day, and as one of our other members said, now get out there and have some fun. Thank you so much, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.